Alrighty, guys, welcome back to Off Camber. I'm TC. This is episode 3 of the Melbourne Grand Prix review. Welcome along. We've got a lot to talk about for this weekend. What a way to start the 2025 championship. It was a banger. And being an Aussie, I'm gutted, but I'm glad we got a Grand Prix to actually start at 3 o'clock here. So, lots to talk about over the weekend, so we're not going to waste any time. And we will firstly talk about. We'll go through the weekend, okay? And then we will discuss our predictions from last week. And first off with predictions, I want to talk about the weather because that was cooked. 37. I was there on the Saturday. I'll be running some clips over the top of this audio to show you where I was watching from. 37 degrees, and mate, it was fucked. Like, we were prunes in the sun, and it was a great day still. But then on the flip side, you had the Sunday, which presented cooler conditions and a lot of rain. So I'm glad I wasn't there for that, but it was good to watch on the TV. So that was the weather side of things. But yeah, it was a crazy weekend in terms of, what sort of came to life of what people were predicting, what people were saying about pace and who's going to perform well. So let's get into it, all right? So, practice. Signs started off the weekend well for Williams, is what I sort of observed. McLaren also had good long run pace. Ferrari seemed to be quicker over one lap, but that didn't transpire in qualifying. And the other thing which I was thinking about in practice was the weather. Obviously, one wet, one dry day. Who was going to go in what direction with downforce to either have a good quali car or a good race car? And we found out throughout the race. So, practice. Ollie Behrman, feel bad for the kid because I don't think it's necessarily a reflection of the talent there. But fuck, you can't deny that it was a flop. That has got to be one of the worst starts for a rookie Grand Prix as far as I can remember. Pretty much, really. I mean, to crash out like that, and then the start of then the start of qualifying, they didn't even put the car back together, and doesn't get to qualify. Other rookies, I think Doohan performed well in practice, but there was no real telling indicators that made me think George Russell had a spin, but there was no other factors that led me to believe anything different for quali or the race. So, not much to note there. Qualifying, Sainz didn't perform as well. Albon stepped it up big time, and he proved me wrong this weekend. I will say that he did a ripping job. But the Williams were quick in qualifying. I just don't think the weekend didn't come together like it felt like it would for them, because they sort of felt like the fourth best team throughout the weekend, and then it just didn't really happen in the race. But anyway, Russell obviously outperformed Antonelli by a long shot, same as Verstappen and Lawson. Lawson, I think, really didn't get enough practice time. Problems with the car potentially, which impacted his qualifying and his overall weekend. So I think there's a lot of caveats on the rookies because it was a tough weekend for everyone. So, we will sort of not take this as crucially as maybe a clean weekend where conditions are more stable and we can get a better understanding of who's where in the rookie order. But so Russell and Verstappen clearly outperformed them. Antonelli had a bit of damage, it looked like, in the qualifying session with something dragging along the ground. So that is potentially what, cost him in qualifying. Uh, McLarens were quick, obviously, 1 and 2. We thought in the crowd Piastri might have got pole, but Norris stole that away, and he deserved it because he was quick, and he was the quicker driver. And he's seeming to be just still a little bit of, has that little bit of pace advantage compared to Oscar. Also on the Saturday, turn 6 was a big change that they made for the track before the weekend. But it was causing a lot of issues with F2 and F3 drivers. I was parked up there for a little bit during those races, and you could see just the amount of shit gravel that was kicked up onto the racetrack from people running wide. It didn't happen as much to the F1 guys, but they did prove to be still a little bit vulnerable of that. So I know that was changed compared to last year. And I think maybe just the solution is it's going to have to be a little bit. It's hard because the more you push that concrete back, the further they're going to go. So I think the top level guys can handle it. And it's just something that's going to happen. The barrier also changed the angle so that to prevent what happened to George Russell last year. But yeah, the F1 guys seemed to be all right with it, but it was more F2 and F3, which was kicking a lot of gravel onto the racetrack. So Lawson, yeah, as I said, Lawson couldn't really get a hold of the car. Lawson was a bit, maybe not as aggressive as he could have been because of that lack of practice. I'm not sure, but I don't think it's something to judge him on. Obviously, it's his first race in a Red Bull that has been pretty, tricky to drive. So we don't expect, well, obviously, it's Verstappen's team. We don't expect, a glory race from Lawson. But I think, give him a few before we start to judge him. Judge a book by its cover, Don't judge a book by its cover. Now, so that was qualifying. Bortoletto, I thought did good in qualifying. Doohan, I thought also had a very good qualifying. He didn't make it to Q3, but bet his second lap in Q2 was under yellows, so I can't remember whether he would have got into Q3 or not, but Gasly ultimately did, so he did well there, but still a good start for Doohan in his career. But yeah, that was all the notes for qualifying. The race, we'll get onto the race on Sunday. So woke up, race was, in jeopardy essentially because the rain looked pretty fucking heavy. So the supercars and F2 race both got cancelled because it was bucketing down. And the supercars, they obviously, not on an international stage, so they are touring cars, the Touring Car Championship down here in Australia. They usually do race in wet conditions, but yeah, this rain was obviously bad enough for them to cancel. And already with a tight enough schedule for them as it is, it was pretty disappointing because they don't have long enough races when it comes to the Grand Prix, because obviously the Grand Prix takes priority with even F2 and F3, which is a little bit annoying because they are the Touring Car Championship here in Australia, which is annoying, but obviously the FIA is not going to budge on that. So both supercars and F2 get rained out, so we're a little bit worried for the Grand Prix. And although it was a bit of a worry, it did get launched straight away. And formation lap, Hadjar bins it. Now, another one of the rookies, I don't want to say I don't want to say, oh, write off Hadjar, because it was happening to everyone, and everyone struggled. Alonso hit the wall. You know, all the top drivers had a moment in this race. So to say that, oh, Hadjar's, why are we picking Hadjar? Why are we picking Lawson? All the top drivers had a moment. So the white lines at this Grand Prix track were abysmal for the drivers. Anytime anyone was touching them, it was just essentially a slip and slide. It was an ice rink. So it happened to Doohan. Doohan was unfortunate. You just dab the throttle. Then it was Sainz. So, it's what can you do? And that's why I don't get all this backlash on the rookies for having a tough weekend when you've got Leclerc spinning around, Alonso spinning around, Hamilton having moments. Verstappen coughed up a second place with his moment down the back at turn. I can't remember what turn it was, but he dropped it almost, if it was much more of a bigger mistake, he would have been in the gravel trap. So he sort of did the right thing by trying to keep it straight and then turning once he got rid of the lockup. But yeah, all the top drivers. So I don't see this, why we need to judge these rookies based on one race. And also, fastest lap of the race, point for fastest lap of the race. Why that has disappeared after, I get the Ricardo shit, but I still think it's a good thing for the sport, rewarding that, that driver who gets and ends up with the fastest lap of the race. But yeah, so tough race for everyone. It seemed like in the initial stages, it was just going to be a McLaren and Verstappen show, which it was. With the gaps, they completely gapped the field. Albon and Tsunoda had a strong first stint. I mean, damn, if Tsunoda could have pulled through and finished the race top 5, that would have been incredible. But Albon, as I said before, excellent job. He's taken out the gun, Carlos. Sainz is a fucking gun, and Albon's outperformed him. So there you go. Lawson, bit of a nothing race and ended up spinning out and crashing. Hamilton struggled in that middle stint to get past Albon, which was surprising. Everyone's airing those Hamilton Ferrari radios as well, which, I don't know, I don't think it's much to make of it. It's their first race, so it's not really a big issue, but that's what Ferrari's known for, so people are running with it. Kimi was quick, but he did make a mistake, but he obviously recovered and made freaking good passes multiple times throughout the race to deliver an unbelievable comeback drive. So that was well done by him. Alonso, as I said before, obviously the most experienced on the grid, caught out with a crash. And the weather caused extremely difficult pit stop decisions. So obviously the first one to get back on the dries, which was honestly well done by McLaren. Last year they sort of suffered from that inability to make assertive decisions, which at times cost them, and they did a great job today. If it wasn't for Piastri's mishap, which was so unfortunate, everyone was gutted as the Australian driver in the Australian Grand Prix curse continues until next year. We got to wait another year to see if Piastri can make a podium there. But yeah, with the dry tyres, it was a big decision. And honestly, in the moment, I thought Verstappen's mediums could cause trouble at the front because a softer tyre could have provided more grip on the restart, which Verstappen was threatening a little bit, but it was all good in the end. So Pretty much everyone else took hards except a few scattered throughout the field. But yeah, then that Piastri fuck up, which cost him his second place. And the other major strategy on the on the commentary and broadcast was the Ferraris staying out. Now, in the end, the safety car did come back into the pits relatively quickly, so I don't think it would have made much difference. But yeah, you did have Crofty suggesting that Ferrari stay out in 2-3, positions 2 and 3, that is, to ride on the safety car's tail until the end of the race, and then just sort of crawl at home to try and scale the podium. But it ended up not happening, and it was probably the right decision in the end anyway, because as I said, the safety car did come out, leaving like 5 or so laps afterwards anyway, so they would have just been done. So the alternative decision should have been to box, and that's where Red Bull got a little bit wrong as well. They didn't box early enough. Once Verstappen went through Norris and Piastri, potentially they should have boxed in those next couple of laps, and then might have ended up getting ahead of Norris with Verstappen. So what can you do? But Hulkenberg recovered well in the points as well for Sauber. Bortoleto was also quick. I'd say he had a good weekend. He did have a spin. So did Leclerc. Lawson into the wall on dry tyres, following a spin. So he was a little bit, as I said, a little bit of a nothing race for Lawson, but we're not going to judge that. And I've put down, can Hulkenberg score points on debut for Sauber, which he did, and that was pretty impressive. Obviously not on pace, but that's the good thing about wet weather racing. It just shakes up the field, and things like this can happen, which is awesome for them. And yeah, Max made a good late push, but ultimately it wasn't enough, as he put a bit of pressure on Lando, but it wasn't really. Lando did make a mistake, which got him in the DRS. And once he was in the DRS, it is pretty easy to stay there with 4 DRS zones. So that's sort of what happened there. But I think Norris was capable of holding on regardless. But yeah, so Antonelli did get a penalty for an unsafe release, which did get revised after the race, so he did reclaim that 4th position, and Russell ended up with a podium as well. So there you go. It was full of drama, action, decision making, strategy, everything to make a great race. And I mean, the only thing missing from it would be a lead change, which was in the question, which is why it was still so good, but it never did actually happen. But yeah, it was always, we don't know what's going to happen. Someone could easily make the wrong decision here, so that's always exciting. So that was sort of the big picture and all the big events in the race there that we want to talk about. I'd say for the rating, we're going to give it a 8 out of 10, which was a banging race. The only negatives I could say about the race would be the lack of momentum with the safety car. When a wet weather race is unfolding like this, sometimes it's hard for the race to naturally unfold without safety car intervention, which did happen a little bit, which sort of resets things and sometimes can benefit people that, were perhaps on the downside, or, other people who were picking up pace and making up positions, resets them back down the order or stuff like that. So that would be the only fault, and the lack of lead change. So we will be rating it an 8 out of 10. All right. So let's go to our predictions. Last week, I predicted Oscar Piastri to win. Now, did I put the Moz on it? I think I did. Because, fuck, he was nowhere near it. He did have some mad overtakes close to the end, though. So we definitely praise him for that. Once he got a bit aggressive, that overtake on Hamilton was ridiculous. So that was really cool to see. But the eventual winner obviously was Norris. Pole, I predicted George Russell, which is a bit shit because he was close, but it was the McLarens. Once we sort of got through that first qualifying, I was sort of like, that's sort of out the window. So Norris ended up with pole. Class drive, I mentioned Sainz and Doohan. Ultimately, that was a poor decision. So, I mean, Sainz is a fucking gun. But he wasn't this weekend, as he binned it under yellow conditions, rendering him useless. And Doohan, same thing, binned it, rendering him useless. For my class drive of the day, it was definitely Kimi Antonelli with a freaking banging comeback drive. He had pace, he had the overtakes, he got to fourth. I mean, even if it was fifth, like, that was still cracking. First race, pretty much all the other rookies suffered, and he thrived. And I'm super keen to see what he does in China because it's going to be freaking good. So we'll see what happens there. Now, the probably honourable mention there would be Alex Albon with the Williams proving to be a good driver who was also fifth. So he was consistent, held up Hamilton, didn't let Hamilton overtake, so he did well there as well, and he was just always in the fight. So I was really impressed with Albon's drive there. Now we had the run wide drive. This is embarrassing as fuck. So the run wide drive, I had Alex Albon. I've literally just flipped them around. So Albon did a excellent job. So he will definitely not be put down for run wide drive. That will go to. I'm sorry, but Carlos Sainz, because he was the first one to bin it. Ollie Behrman overall weekend probably was a run wide for him, but you know what? To be fair to him, he finished the race. So that's all you can ask for after all that shit that he sort of went through in practice and qualifying. So the run wide drive will have to go to Carlos Sainz. Under yellow conditions, he did blame it on a clunky gear change or a clunky upshift, which, you know, fair enough, but you binned it. So, under yellow conditions. And he was the first to go out of the experienced drivers. So, he gets the run wide drive of the day. Now, that was our predictions and our results. So, as I said, completely embarrassed as I've flipped the script. McLaren was probably the team of the race, easily, because they made the right decisions. And honestly, Oscar's with Oscar's cock up, he still ran a good race. Like, other than that foot wrong, he was quick. He had good aggressive overtakes. McLaren made the right decisions, and they were capable of saying, "Yep, box," or "When this happens, box." And they didn't seem sort of sloppy in instances they did sort of last year. So that was really good to see. So overall, it was a banging Grand Prix. We're fucking keen for China this week. So I'll be putting out some predictions for the Chinese Grand Prix shortly. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Hopefully we get a good weekend and, low variability, because we sort of want to see them on a bit more of a stable field where we can maybe assess them a little bit better. But that's all we've got today, guys. Thanks for tuning into the Off Camber podcast. This is TC. We'll see you next time.